Welcome back. You're watching Uncovering Real Estate, brought to you by the Brampton Real Estate Board. I'm your host, Sarabjit Rana. It's great to be with you. If you've just joined us, I have in studio with me Peter Puzzo, mortgage broker with Dominion Lending Centers. Thank you, sir. We were having a really interesting conversation about, to be quite honest, something that I found a little daunting, to be quite frank. As a consumer, we often think, oh no, I've got to get a mortgage, I've got to figure it out, I want to find somebody who's going to help me, and that's your role as a mortgage broker. And so prior to break, we were talking about the variable and the fixed rate, and we were talking about how sometimes the big boss people, right, the bank people decide, hey, this is where we're going to lower the mortgage rate, but sometimes the major banks don't follow that credence forward and pass it along to their consumers.
Right.
Right? So let's get back on that topic. Fixed and variable rate. How do we decide what's going to be better for us, and how do we decide when we want to do this?
Right. So, I mean, as we mentioned before the break, part of my job is to analyze my client's risk tolerance.
Yep.
And not everyone is made to be in a product where the rates may or may not fluctuate. Mm-hmm. Not everyone deals well with that, especially when the rates are going the wrong way.
Right.
So in deciding which way to go, variable versus fixed, I'm a numbers guy, right? Okay. So my clients rely on me for my opinion. I put them in a position to make an informed decision, but in that process, I tell them which way I would go if I was brokering my own mortgage at that time. So when comparing the variable versus the fixed, the biggest thing you have to look at, really, in my opinion, is when you're going variable, you're taking a risk. So you should get paid, or you should be compensated to take that risk. And the amount of compensation is important. Today, in my professional opinion, that compensation is next to nothing, because you can go into a variable rate today at 2.25% or 2.3%, and you can get a 5-year fixed rate at 2.5%. So when the spread or the margin or the difference is only a 0.25%, in my opinion, you are by no means being compensated to assume any risk. Now, that being said, we don't see any pressure on variable rates over the next 12 to 18 months.
Right.
The Bank of Canada has made that quite clear.
Right.
But even still, if I'm brokering my own mortgage today, I would lean towards the 5-year fixed.
So basically, just for semantics' sake, and part and parcel of delivering this information is so that our viewers, laymen, just like all of us, get some valuable information that really helps them decide, or at least for their next step say, oh, I didn't know that. Because a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing, right? Because everybody thinks they know it all. And so it's really important to go to the source and say, is this really the case?
Yes.
So coming back to that, I want to say, what kind of a difference would that be in mortgage? You're talking what, $100 and maybe $200?
No, not even.
Not even.
Far less than that.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, like, you're talking about, depending on the mortgage amount, obviously, and the amortization period that you choose. Let's say we take, for example, a $300,000 mortgage. You know, the fixed payment might carry for about $1,200 a month. The variable might carry for about $1,150 a month.
Wow.
It's not a very big difference.
No, it's not.
You know, keeping in mind that it's not only how much is coming out of my pocket that's the cost, it's the interest differential, right? So, I mean, on a $300,000 mortgage, 1/4% is about $700 a year in savings. So you may go variable, you may save for year 1, you may even save for year 2. But in my professional opinion, you're going to lose in years 3, 4, and 5.
Okay, and that's important, and that's what your job is, to be able to establish that relationship and to share and move forward with the client that you're representing.
100%. And I always encourage my clients to get a second opinion. I mean, many of us come from immigrant parents. My parents would never speak to a mortgage broker. They would walk into their bank, whether one of the big 5 or the big 6. And I tell my clients, look, you should take your parents' advice, walk into the bank and speak to a bank rep, and then call your local mortgage broker. And this way you can decide who you want working on your side and make an informed decision. And
you make a good point, because immigrant parents, immigrant people, those that have newly come to Canada, regardless of where they've come from, they think there's a different thinking process
100%.
that takes place there, right?
100%.
And they're totally entitled to that. So touching on that a little bit, because I know we have to go to break soon, I want to start on that topic now and then come back to it. What are your thoughts on that? What is your professional advice in terms of immigrants new to the country, right?
Yep.
First-time home buyers.
Yep.
It's a big deal for them.
It is. I mean, and we'll take the immigrant and the first-time buyer, even though it could be one and the same. We'll treat them somewhat differently.
Okay.
The immigrant first-time buyer has even more anxieties than the Canadian-born first-time home buyer.
Absolutely.
You know, so the one thing I really encourage them to do is hopefully they've got a full-time job. That's a must.
Yeah.
But establish a relationship with a major bank.
Okay.
So put some money into a bank account. Once you have money in a bank account, they will often give you a secured visa.
Yeah. Get some credit going, establish your credit.
100%.
Yeah.
Get some credit. Cell phones now report on credit bureaus, so that helps your credit rating.
Okay.
Establish that relationship.
Okay.
There are definitely programs in place for immigrants, ranging from 5% down to 35% down, depending on employment and time in the country and credit rating and things like that. But your typical first-time buyer is really the client that I get the most enjoyment from, because it's not, the first thing I tell them is, it's not, here's my interest rate.
Yeah.
The first thing I tell my first-time buyers is, first of all, I want you to know that I know this is not easy.
No, it's
There's
not.
a lot of anxiety, whether you're learning how to drive or learning how to swim or buying your first home.
Sure.
It could be an anxious experience.
Sure
So the
can.
first thing I tell them is, hey, look, everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Right? And I encourage my clients to ask me as many questions as they like. There's no such thing as a dumb question. Once they hear you say that everything's going to be okay, you could almost feel the
sigh of relief.
The sigh of relief, the monkey off their back. They're like, I'm glad this guy knows where I'm coming from, because they're intimidated.
Yeah.
And in my profession, the one thing I have to make sure that I do, remind myself every day, is, you know, not to use jargon, not to use big terms that might intimidate our clients, because they're coming to you for advice. They're not coming to you to, you know, make things even harder than what it already is.
No.
So we keep things real simple. We tell our first-time buyers, everything's going to be okay. Here's your options. Here's your payments. And then once they realize that it's going to be okay, then really we're building lifetime relationships.
And on that note, you can go grab a snack, because we're going to be right back after this break. So that's